Hey everybody, it's me, and I'm here with an overview of next month's Great Artist lesson for our first and second graders. Well, this is our last lesson. This is it, our last project of the year. And all year the kids have been learning about elements of design, and they've learned about color, shape, line, and value. And in this lesson, they're going to wrap it all up together in one project where they kind of have everything incorporated into one project. But before we get into the project, let me tell you a little bit about the lesson first, and then I will go over the project. So right off the bat, we excite the children's eyes with these amazing textures that you see right here. And that's what texture is all about. It's all about creating a look and a feel. And we simply ask the kids, what do you want to do? When you look at this, what is it that you want to do with these textures? And most of the time, it's all about experiencing these textures through the sense of touch. But we need to explain to the kids that it's not just about touching and feeling. That texture creates a sense of sight as well, making the mind believe that they can touch and feel it in their mind. That is the amazing thing about texture and what it can do when it is put into an art project. We're going to go on and talk about different types of texture. There's tactile texture, there's visual texture, and the first thing we're going to touch on is tactile texture, the one that the kids can really relate to. And of course, what is tactile texture? It is the surface and texture that can be touched. And it ranges. It could be soft, it could be gritty. There's all different ways that your fingers feel as well as your eyes, but your fingers feel with tactile texture. And then we just have the kids give us some examples. Give us some examples out in the world of what things would be considered tactile texture and what they feel like. And you can even have the kids close their eyes after they've given you some examples and ask them to think about these different things in their mind, how they might feel. Even though they can't physically touch them, their mind understands how they feel. So you can ask them to close their eyes and ask them to imagine running their fingers over a cat's fur, touching the bark of a tree, what water feels like, what the bottom of a man-made shoe feels like. There's things in nature and there's things that are man-made that all have texture, and kids love textures. They just want to touch and feel. And in fact, when they look at this, they're going to go like, oh man, I have that, or that looks so cool, I just want to touch it. There are definitely kids out there that are super tactile driven. And so we want to touch onto that first to kind of give them a sense of what texture feels like. And then we're going to go into visual texture. So we're going to tie the tactile texture to the visual texture concept. Now that we've got the kids thinking about the way textures feel, it's time to move them into what is called visual texture. This is what artists do. They create texture in a painting or a drawing. And as you can see here, this flat surface right here, this flat painting, it looks like it's moving. It looks like it's water. It looks like it's bulging out of the page a little bit. And that's what artists do. They simply use things like dots and lines and shapes to create these visual textures. And we want them to think about this and the idea of creating texture in a painting, because when they observe and feel actual textures, it can help an artist represent them in a two-dimensional surface. And this is what they're going to be doing in their art project. So considering what they know how a texture feels, now how would they switch that texture into a visual using dots, lines, and shapes? So in this lesson, it's a little bit different because we're going to use the art a little bit more in this lesson. We touch upon what texture is, but why don't we have them experience it or be able to explain it by looking at a couple of pieces of art from some famous artists, Henri Matisse and Vincent van Gogh. So on the cart, there will be two printed paintings, Starry Night and The Purple Robe, and in your leader's guide there are going to be notes and questions that you can ask the kids about these particular paintings. So it's up to you how much you want to share or how much you want to talk, but it's an opportunity for you to have them look at art and look at how the artist created texture using different lines and techniques within the art. So that's what you want to do. You just want to read through the little synopsis about the artist and the particular piece of art and use that information to have a discussion about texture in the art. All right, it's project time. And this project uses everything that they've learned this past year. It uses color, it uses texture, it uses lines and shapes and hues. And with this art project, they're going to be using watercolor paper. And the thing about watercolor paper is one side is rough and one side is smooth. On the smooth side is where they put their name, and on the rough side, they'll be able to feel it. You can walk around and help them. On the rough side is where they're going to do their drawing and their painting. And with this particular art project, they get to draw whatever they want. As long as they're creating a lot of texture and drawing really big on the paper, that's what we want to make sure that they understand, is they want to draw big with lots of texture. But the thing about that is, for some kids, it's difficult to start on projects like this. When they have freedom to do whatever they want, that can be really frustrating for some kids. So just be prepared that you might have to help certain kids come up with an idea. Maybe you tell the whole class that they have to draw a vase of flowers, much like Henri Matisse's painting, or maybe they all draw an animal. Whatever it is that you want to do, they can have free range and draw whatever they want, or you can assign a particular thing for them to draw, only because some kids have a lot of difficulty. So those kids that have difficulty, you may have to spend a little extra time with them and help them come up with an idea of what to draw. Regardless of what you choose to do, regardless of what they draw, there are some things that we want to make sure that they understand to do. Number one is put their name on the back of the smooth side of the watercolor paper. We want them to draw something big, something that takes up the whole page. They can put a border around the page, whatever it is. So we want them to draw something big, and it's got to fill that whole paper. And you see the tips that are at the bottom there. We want them to fill the whole paper with their drawing, and we want them to put different colors and patterns and textures. And as you can see by this example, there's the crisscross texture, the texture of a rough table. There are the lines in the background as if it's like wallpaper, and the petals even have texture. Maybe the petals, you have a little bit of texture on them. It isn't just about making them look smooth, but giving them texture. That's really what we want to encourage them to do, put a lot of texture on whatever it is that they draw. And that we want them to use bright colors. We don't want them to use any dark colors. Now, once they're finished drawing their ginormous texturized piece of artwork, then they're going to take a single color of watercolor, just a one color. We want to encourage them only to use one color, and that's just to kind of give it a little movement, a little feel, to give it a little more color, a little more texture. And when they're using watercolors, we want to tell them to load up their brush with a lot of water. They want to use big brushes. Load it up with a lot of water. They can even put a little water in the lid of their watercolor tray, and then take some color and load that into the watercolor tray, and then sweep that across the entire paper to give it that feel of movement, that texture, and add a little more color to the picture. And that's the project, all about creating texture, creating somewhat of a movement, and kind of incorporating all the things that they've learned this year. At the end of the time with them, you want to tell them that now it's over. We're done. We're all done with Great Artists. But it's not completely over, because in May, March, excuse me. And March, May, oh my gosh, when's open house? Whenever open house is, we want to tell them they're going to be working with their teachers to pick their utmost favorite piece of artwork. The teachers has held on to all of them. They're going to pick their favorite piece of artwork, and they're going to display it at open house in a special open house art show. And that's it. That's it for Great Artists this year. Thank you so much for volunteering. Thank you so much for your time, and happy creating. I'll see you in the hallways.